Hello guys and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, I believe this is going to be a super good video for you if you're a long-term Palantir investor, or if you're wondering why the stock has fallen and if Palantir has lost its mojo, and maybe this was their last good earnings and they reported really bad numbers, and from now on the stock is just going to go down. And even if you're a believer in Palantir, I think this video is going to give you something new. So please make sure you're subscribed. You can follow me on X at @VinceIsBullish also if you want, and we can chat there. So a lot of investors seem to have lost faith in Palantir, and if they didn't lose faith, they lost a little bit of enthusiasm, and they want to just wait and see what's happening with the stock. And I think that that is not fully warranted. The problem is that we went into this earnings with 200% revenue growth, and people somehow want the stock to continue to go up and do another 200%, which is basically completely unrealistic. But if you zoom out and forget what the stock has done, management basically came in as they said they would come in. So that's always a good sign. But Palantir, nevertheless, is a company that is very hard to understand for two reasons. One, it's a super advanced company technically to understand, but also it's super hard to understand the financials of the company and how it works. And a lot of retail people, and I think Wall Street has no clue, and I think some retail people, but most of the retail people also don't understand the numbers of Palantir. And hey, I was doing the research for this video because I wanted to prove a point, and even I learned new things. So this is, why it's good to make videos, because you learn new things. So I believe that the last quarter you saw exactly what you would see if Palantir would be getting ready to, re-accelerate growth and, get going again. But if you don't know what that is that you need to look for, then you're going to miss it and you're going to think that it was a bad quarter. So when it comes to Palantir, we need to go back to the basics. So what do we know about this company? So we know that Palantir has a very, very long sales cycle. So that means that sometimes it can take years for them to get sales done. And because of this, if you look at the history of Palantir, sometimes they needed to basically give away the product for free. This happened in the army, for example, that they kept getting no from the army, and then they for free gave the product to soldiers to use it, and then the soldiers were so happy that they went back to the generals and they were begging them to buy Palantir as a software. And that was years before they got contracts from there. Then it happened with the NHS. When COVID came, Palantir offered to give their Foundry platform for $1 to help England handle COVID. And then they got a very small contract by the NHS, and now they're having a gigantic contract in the works that it's 2023 and that contract is still not announced. And COVID happened in 2020, and it all started with a $1 offer from Palantir for the product. So very often Palantir would, they want to, because Palantir is a very expensive product, right? So actually their sales strategy is brilliant. They let you use the product, they let you know what value it's giving you, and then once you know how valuable the product is, then they do the contract negotiations and they rip you off. No, they don't rip you off, because obviously you don't mind paying 20 million if you're saving 50, 60 million on the other end, right? But you really have to be shown that you're saving that much money for you to sign such a big contract, okay? And then, so we know the sales cycle is very long. We know that sometimes they need to give away the product for very, very cheap to show the value. And then we know that after that, the product is very, very sticky, and usually the customers buy more and more as they see more and more value of the company. This is why the Palantir has a positive net dollar retention. So that means that if a customer bought for 1 million last year and this year they buy for 1.2 million, then you retain that customer, and you not only retain that customer, you increase the pay by 20%. So that's why the net dollar retention is 120%. Now, this quarter they reported a net dollar retention of 110%, and that's quite low, and it's sort of a red flag. I'm going to go into that later, but nevertheless it's a positive number. So that means that when they get customers, the customers, they just grow every year. And this is what that looks like. This table is going to come in very handy. So I took 3 customers. So you have 1 customer, customer 2, customer 3. It's going to get very nerdy, but I promise it's going to be worth it. So this customer, they managed to write a at cost contract so that they pay for the, you know, the engineers or something. There's definitely no profit on this. It even hurts the margin. But then after, I don't know, 8 to 9 months, they managed to write a contract for $1 million. And then this new customer is going to go on the usual, like, scaling 30% the first year, and then 25% the year after, and then 25%, and then 20%, and then 20%, and then, you know, go lower and lower, but the dollar amount keeps getting bigger and bigger. And you can see that the customer that was 1 million in year 1, in year 6 is 3 million. Now you have customer 2. That customer, Palantir just gave away the product, but on year 1 they got a 5 million contract, and then you can see that it's scaling as the other customers, right? Then customer 3 is a gigantic contract where they managed to get a little bit of money, but probably they lose a lot of money on this. Still in year 1, they get the 10 million contract, and then they're scaling up the customer. So in year 0, what you're going to see is actually negative margin and a worsening of Palantir's financials because they're acquiring customers. But then in year 1 and 2 and 3, Palantir is going to have less and less and less cost with the customer because, you know, they maybe in year 1 they still use forward deploy engineers that custom make the product to this company, and that becomes less and less and less as the company is more and more accustomed to use Palantir, and the product gets stickier and stickier and harder to go off of. It's really like a drug or cancer, like it spreads in the company. And obviously the only way that this is possible is that Palantir brings this value. Okay, so this was very important to know. So again, it's very simple. Palantir just needs to get its foot through the door. They needs to get customers, and then those customers, as the time goes on, they will scale and scale and scale, and Palantir will get a lot of revenue. Okay, so but it is not that simple. What happened with the slides? So it is not that simple because Palantir is a 20-year-old company with a lot of very, very established clients. So that means that some of their clients have been scaling for 20 years. So they have become gigantic. How gigantic? You can see it here. The top 20 customers make 53 million per customer. I did the math. It's about 50%, more than 50% of this quarter's revenue was from the top 20 customer. Okay, so you have 20 gigantic customers that take 50% of the revenue of the company. Okay, so it is complicated because the top 20 is so big that it overshadows when you get new customers, and I'm going to show it in a table. So and think about it, it's not just the top 20. Let's say 6 years ago, they got some customers and they have also scaled. So those customers are also very big, not as big as the top 20, but they're very big. But then also 5 years ago, they got new customers which have scaled. So basically when they're getting new customers that are beginning to, you know, be delivered for free or for very cheap to lock them in this year 0, they barely move the revenue despite the companies actually expanding. I think you're beginning to see a pattern here. So I want to show you what happens to customers. This was the last year when Palantir disclosed this number. I wish that they would keep doing this. You know, the conspiracy theorists would say in me that because this trend didn't continue, this is why they're not showing it, I think, but there might be other reasons that I might go into. But quickly to explain what you can see here, this dark gray here is the customers that came in 2018, and this is US commercial. So you see that those customers paid 7 million to Palantir. Now this could have been 10 customers, 15 customers, it's not disclosed. Then the next year, the same dark gray customers paid 10 million. So you can see they scaled 30%. And then that 10 million scaled to 15 million the year after. So that's a 50% growth after the 30% growth. And then that 15 million scaled to 17 million, which is not so sexy, but it's still a nice growth nevertheless. But look at what happened with the 2019 customers. They went from 19 million to 69 million. That's a 300% increase, okay? And then the 69 million went to 102 million. And that's because these customers like the product, they see the use of it, and then they increase the usage of the product because it's a very sticky product, right? Now, what's not in here is that probably the customers that came in 2020, they started working on them in 2018, maybe in 2019. Okay, so they are like a zero in 2019, but they're working on them, and then the revenue starts coming in 2020. So keep in mind that that's not here. And then you can see that the 2020 customers went from 6 million to 18 million. So that's also a 3x scaling with the customers. So this growth is even more dramatic in the government sector, because you can see that in 2018 in the government they went from 31 million to 61 million, which is a double, and then it went to 3x, and then it went to an almost double, like 80%, which is insane growth. Then the next year from 2019 they went from 2 million to 18 million to 43 million. It's insane. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that you get this point. So the only way for Palantir to really have huge number of growth is, and here I have to show you because I had to do calculations for myself so that I see with the numbers what happens with Palantir. So I know that this is not the reality currently of Palantir, but I just wanted to take like an average so we understand what is happening with the company. So this is yearly numbers, and again I know that we're at 2 billion and this is 500 million, so it's the percentages and the ratios that you need to pay attention to. But everything is probably 4x currently in Palantir. So in this imaginary scenario, we take year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, and you can see that the existing top 20 is 50% of the revenue of the company. But then, as I said, you have customers that they got 6 years ago. They have already scaled up to 70 million. Then they had customers that they got 5 years ago. They scaled up to 55 million. And so forth, so that you can see the logic of this, okay? That is 500 million. So now let's say that Palantir gets 30 new customers, which is quite nice for Palantir, and each customer is $1 million, okay? So they add 30 million to the revenue, but that 30%, because the other customers are so big and they're also scaling, is not really showing up in the revenue growth because it gets mixed in with all the others. So Palantir is actually only growing 23.8%. And then the next year Palantir gets 30 new customers. Again, 30 million new contract. But you can see that the growth is actually slowing because the earlier customers are so big that they overshadow the new customers, okay? And something that you cannot see here is that I made sure that in the calculations, the scaling of the customer slows with the years. So year 1 to year 2, it's 30%, and then from 30% is 25%, and then 25%, and then 20, and then it goes down because you can't scale forever, right? So this is a very, very detailed calculation. Now, I wanted to see what would have to happen for Palantir to start accelerating the revenue. And I came to that you need to see a 30% growth in customers, because this is when you see, if I change this to 39, this is when you see that the growth here and here, it starts to be equal. And then if I add 30% here, now it's very late, I don't know why I didn't do it, okay, times 1.3, then you see that you even have a slight acceleration. If I would put, I was playing with this, if you would put like 28%, then you start seeing a slight deceleration, okay? So this is very, very important because, again, if Palantir is really accelerating growth, what you would actually see in year 0 is a worsening margin, an increased number of customers, but the revenue wouldn't increase because the revenue increase comes as the customers scale up later, okay? So the only way for Palantir to grow is to obviously increase the number or get much bigger contracts. But Palantir contracts are so huge that it's completely unrealistic that Palantir would be able to get $1 billion. Maybe it's realistic, I don't know. But that's also mathematically a way. So what did we see in the last earnings call? I know that the revenue growth was 13%, and that's very, very disappointing. But look at what Karp wrote in the shareholder letter. It said, as a result, the demand for AIP is anything we have seen in the past 20 years. We are currently in discussion with more than 300 additional enterprises to deploy AIP within the organization, all of which are searching for an effective and secure means of adapting the latest large language models for use on their internal systems and proprietary data. So that's fantastic. So that's 300 potential new customers. Now, he doesn't say if it's already 300 existing customers that are going over or it's brand new customers. I got the idea that it's a mix. So some old, some new, but it's fantastic growth for Palantir. Then they reported the customer count, and you can see it was a 38% year-over-year growth. And if the net dollar retention would be this 30%, then that would mean that this 38% is an acceleration of growth for Palantir. It's going to result in that in the future, okay? But it was not all good on the earnings call. There were red flags. And one of the red flags, so in this, I don't want to, I'm not going to PR you, I'm not going to blow smoke up your butt. It was not perfect, and there are some question marks. However, I think that based on the clues that were given, you can reasonably work out what really happened, and I'm going to tell you. So the net dollar retention fell to 110%, and this needs an explanation. Again, I'm fairly certain I understand what is going on there. Then the year-over-year growth is slowing every quarter, and even the high growth segments of Palantir is showing slow growth, like the US commercial. So I think what is happening is that, as Karp said, that their strategy with AIP is basically just to take the whole market, and they will figure out how they monetize on it later. That's number one. And number two is, I believe that there is a very tough economic situation in the US and in Europe. Things are slowing down, and I think that they are doing the Amazon way of doing business, which is that they are talking to their customers how they can spend less with Palantir to keep the customers and keep them loyal, and really deliver value to the customers. And maybe that involves switching them over to AIP, which somehow temporarily results in less income to Palantir. I'm fairly certain that this is what's happening based on the clues that they are giving. So this is why I'm not super nervous about this, but I'm going to be honest, this is a red flag with Palantir, okay? So what is my opinion? So my opinion on the stock is that you guys just have to become patient. It's impossible that the stock would run 200% every quarter and between every earnings. And to be honest, I'm a very, very long-term investor, and I think that they are executing. The company is showing exactly what I want to see. I want them to have new customers and a rapid increase of new customers. And I understand that at first that does not come with revenue. So I'm not surprised that they are not really growing fast. But obviously, if it goes many, many quarters, let's say 3, 4, 6, 7 quarters, and the growth doesn't pick back up, that would be a thesis breaker, and it would be showing that there is something wrong with Palantir. But currently, I believe that we're seeing exactly what we need to be seeing, and you just need to have patience, my young Padawan. Please make sure you subscribe. You can follow me on X, Vince is Bullish. You can chat with me over there, and thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao, ciao.